Hi everybody, good evening. This is Michael, and for the next week or so I'll be substituting for Tuya on these Ask programs, but she'll be tuning in wherever she is, and we will proceed with our work today, thinking about the soul of nations. You know, think of it for just a moment. What really is the soul of a nation? What is we can glibly use those words, but think of it now. And how does it contrast with the personality of a nation? Maybe you can use your own nation as an example. We'll just ponder for a few moments, what is really the soul of a nation? You know, surely it's a certain mode of perception or consciousness. Surely it's a great energy, and it's revelatory of a certain destiny, is it not? Every nation has its own destiny in the Confederation of Nations, or let's call it the Confederation or Federation of Nations. All have a certain quality to bring through, and when the people in a nation have been elevated to a certain point of consciousness, a certain percentage of the people, then the causal body of that nation is standing in a condition of relative unfoldment. We have, it's very rare, let us say, to have nations which are first degree initiate nations. Most are struggling with aspiration, some not at all, some are on the path of discipleship. A truly initiate nation, we could debate it, it is a rarity if it exists. And think how that causal body of the nation must unfold over time if its true soul quality is to be revealed upon the physical plane. Now that's what we're all trying to bring about when we cooperate with the divine plan. Perhaps I'll read just a little bit from the destiny of the nations, and I apologize that I cannot, read this in Finnish, or it would be a great sin if I tried. But a few thoughts. The idea of a spiritual hierarchy which will govern the people throughout the world and will embody in itself the best elements of the monarchical, the democratic, the totalitarian, and the communistic regimes. Okay, this is a future possibility. And how does hierarchy manage this? They do manage it somehow, and we, with our idealisms, focus on only one possibility and fight the other possibilities. Most of these groups of ideologies, most, maybe not the totalitarian so much, except when a nation is completely consecrated to a particular shared goal, usually under some kind of pressure or stress, then perhaps that ideology can emerge in a valuable way. But he says most of these groups of ideologies have latent in them much beauty, strength, and wisdom. These are the Masonic triplicities: beauty, strength, and wisdom, and also a profound and valuable contribution to the whole. Each will eventually see its contribution embodied under the control of the hierarchy of the Lords of Compassion and the Masters of the Wisdom. There is a distinction there, and usually more along the soft line ray. We have the rays, we have the Lords of Compassion and the Masters of the Wisdom, perhaps a bit more hard line in them. But both are advanced human beings, and they will eventually exert the right kind of control over the human process and the planetary process, and the value of these ideologies will emerge. The restoration of the ancient Atlantean control by the spiritual forces is still in the future, but the Aquarian age will see the restitution of this inner and spiritual guidance on a higher turn of the spiral. There was a time, we know, when the masters walked openly among the human beings of the period, and well, through war and through human choice, they had to retreat to a more subjective position and let humanity work out certain things before it was possible for them to reappear, and now they do on a higher turn of the spiral millions of years later. All this must inevitably be brought about by the work of those who function on one or other of the 5 controlling rays to which I have referred above. All rays are present, but certain of them are, 5 of them at this time, are more in expression. The 6th ray is fading out. The 1st ray is not truly and completely represented. The other rays are present in various degrees of intensity. So nothing can stop or truly impede their united effort, the effort of these united effect, the effect of the rays which will condition humanity. And this is a point, he says, I would have you remember. Modern man is apt to condemn the ideology which is not familiar to him and for which he has no use. And we see this rampant in the world today. We see the Martian warring of ideologies, and we can only hope for the incoming of the 4th ray and the sign Libra to balance this situation and help people see the value of the other perspective. He, man, repudiates those ideas which do not lie at the back of his national and personal life or tradition. You know, this is very much on the 6th ray. This is the problem, that narrow vision. So he repudiates these which do not lie at the back of his national and personal life or tradition, and which would not suit him as an individual, nor meet the end of, meet the need of the nation to which he belongs. Because, you know, different ideologies evolve in different geographical areas and among different religions and races to meet the evident need, and not all are suitable at the same time for every place. So you cannot, at this stage of human evolution, impose one particular ideology upon all human beings in all places from all traditions. that would be, kind of a totalitarian move, and it is not acceptable. The recognition of these facts would lead to two results if correctly applied. First, the individual who accepts and is devoted to a particular ideology would cease fighting other ideologies. It's the Martian vibration, it's a non-sacred planet, and there are a great number of monads on our planet which are subject to the Martian influence. And we need far more the coming in of the Venus vibration. So he would cease fighting other ideologies, for he would remember that the accident of birth and of background is largely responsible for making him, as an individual, what he is and determining his beliefs. And secondly, it would bring to an end the attempt to impose a personally or nationally accepted ideology. This glamour of imposition, when you combine the first ray and the sixth ray together, it appears in its most virulent form. So it would bring to an end the attempt to impose a personally or nationally accepted ideology, political or religious, on other nations and persons. Well, we have to emerge from these tendencies right now, and many leaders of certain nations have attempted to do this in the recent past and in the present, and it cannot lead to any good and cooperative unifying result. So these are the basic steps towards eventual peace and understanding, and hence I emphasize them today. So this will be the little section that we read, to gather the Tibetan's thoughts, always wise and useful to us. We tend to be still very personal, very individual, compared to what a true initiate or master may be, the one who sees the larger picture and who understands that behind circumstance and phenomena can be found the true being. And this idea of the accident of birth or location conditioning us is very real. So we have to learn how to be tolerant and accepting of the other person's point of view, and the study of the 7 rays will certainly help us in this more inclusive point of view, because we will see the necessity of the apparently contradictory streams of energy. They all do unify on the top of the mountain, so to speak, and a great synthetic vision is understood. It's understood by some of the masters, by the Chohans, even more by the Christ, and certainly in Shambhala, the synthesis of all of these Ray Lords' qualities is deeply understood. Now, Tuya's not here today. I'm going to maybe do things maybe in a slightly abbreviated manner and not follow exactly the method that we have been using, but I just want us to prepare just a little for the idea that a great light is trying to emerge in humanity, creating humanity as a station of light. Humanity is Manas in many ways, and Mercury is its planet, and a great lighted demonstration is what we expect will occur. So we are light bearers, we're working under Taurus, we're members of the new group of world servers, and we work to bring the network of triangles etherically and cosmically etherically to our phenomenal world, so that the soul, the triad, and the monad, all of them triple, may begin to manifest in the square of human existence. So every day carry your triangles with you and your relationships, which are subjective, and it's going to be helping the soul of the planet emerge. And certainly first the soul of your own nation and your own soul. In a way, there's only, one soul, one consciousness, but apparently divided. Now, very simply, what is the soul of a nation? Its best qualities, its most redeeming qualities, its most redeeming perspectives, far less limited vision than when we are blinded by our personality mind and desires, our personality limitations. We're all here to serve the emerging soul of the planet, finally, the second-ray soul of love wisdom of the planet. But before that, we have to develop soul consciousness ourselves and begin to serve the soul of the groups in which we may be taking part, and of the nation in which we find our citizenship. Now, I know many of us think of ourselves as global citizens, and in a way we are, but that doesn't mean that we cannot encourage the development of the causal body in which we find our presence. We're all part of the causal body of our particular nation, and then each one of those is part of the causal body of humanity, and all of that is taking shape and form as we become aspirants, and as humanity becomes not only the planetary aspirant but the planetary disciple. It's on its way, and pretty soon, before long, maybe a century or two, it's hard to say, and it's not for us to say, humanity will become the planetary initiate of the first degree. So just pause then for a moment and think of your particular nation. Think of it in its personality expression, and maybe you know that there are signs of the zodiac and rays associated with it, or you speculate thereon. And then think of it in terms of its higher qualities and streams of energies, and that which it is supposed to truly contribute to the world. Think of your nation in a dual manner. We'll spend a little bit of time to do this. You see, by living our life, primarily, let us say, within a certain nation, we have the obligation of knowing what its divine destiny may be, even though the complete fulfillment of that destiny may be far off in terms of how we think of time. But a contribution will be made by our nation. So here's the question: do we know what that contribution really is? Now, you know, probably there are quite a few of us from different nations that are tuning in and or will be listening to this later. And, you know, if we could hear from each other in this broadcasting mode, sometimes we'll have to do a webinar on this. People from the different countries will join and give their own opinion of what is this contribution that can be made, should be made, in line perhaps with what the Tibetan has indicated, but also from our own perception, and you know what's in the way. So often we project the obstacle. The obstacle is not necessarily lying in other nations who we consider to be enemies. The obstacle so often is within the nation itself, the enemy within. But it takes some psychological sophistication to come to the point where one stops blaming others and looks deep within. There is such a process as national introspection. And the leaders of nations have to have this kind of attitude as well, and so many of them do not. They just project their own faults on others. But as we gather the representatives of the different nations and hear from them about the qualities that could emerge as they see it, and the obstacles that are in the way, I think we'll get a very synthetic point of view, a holistic point of view about how our nation can fit within the emerging unity of national and international relations. Now, there's no question that some nations do interfere with others, and that has to be noted too. But it's a sign of immaturity, basically, to do so. Nations are not yet mature, and most of humanity is not yet spiritually mature. And who's to say that any one of us really is? And so the question arises. It's a question that maybe we should put to ourselves fairly frequently. Having some idea of the motto of our nation, if it's one of the larger nations, or what the motto might be. If it's one of the smaller nations, you can try to divine what that might be. How am I, the disciple in this nation, contributing to the expression of the soul quality of my nation. We'll take a little time thinking about this, meditating about this. Each one of us, will have different gifts and our own qualities of contribution, even as we are cultivating other qualities which are not quite with us yet. And when we give these spiritual qualities to our environment and to our community and to our state, let us say, or regional area, and finally to our nation, we are enhancing the contribution of the soul of our nation. And so, let's think in those terms. It's so easy to get caught up in one's own life of discipleship, and even the group may not receive from us the attention it deserves. But we have to think in larger terms, and certainly, eventually, in terms of the one humanity, with all of its various national experiments. And finally, planetarily, well, I can't say finally, it's another step to think in terms of the planet. What's that statement? I'm not sure I have it correct, but it's something like thinking globally, acting locally. Through meditation and through hands-on application in the world of physical phenomena, we intend to make a difference for the necessary unification of humanity, that kind of peace of a certain degree which must occur before the Christ can safely reappear. The kind of sharing that must appear. The kind of cleansing of our vehicles, whether the personal vehicles or organizations. These are the things which will improve when we begin to find our own soul and find and work for the emergence of the soul of our nation within the divine plan. things are foggy on Earth at the moment, and the astral plane is having an undue effect. I guess that's just where humanity is. But we can help clarify all this, and that's one of our jobs as students of esotericism. And our relationship with the Great Lord must be a real thing. It's not, like asking him to save us or something like that, the way certain religions conceive of the relationship between the man and the head of hierarchy. It's the pledge, to cooperate with him as the head of hierarchy, who is a great expression of the divine plan. And so thinking of him and his presence, he's real, of course, we can say together, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya, be with us. And if we are with him, he will be with us. There's no question about that. Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there am I. This is the idea set forth, because he is in a way, the principle of loving, wise relationship. So there's nothing specifically religious about this approach. It is spiritual, and it's inclusive of all the spiritual efforts made to help the soul of humanity emerge. Yes, there are many problems, and hand in hand we can solve them. It's coming after we notice that the old ways just don't work. We went past that effort of saving the boys from the cave, It was amazing. A global effort shows what can be done cooperatively. It inspired the imaginations and bravery of so many. Sacrificial effort, and was a success. We have to learn how to identify as the soul, as the consciousness within the objective form. It's a very subtle thing. It's always the observer. And the attitude of the observer will lead us to the soul we are. So let us now think of the great invocation, that great word of power released from Shambhala when the Christ pledged to return in person for the Aquarian Age. Now let us say together, affirming our participation in the new group of world servers, the mantram of the new group of world servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. The great chain of hierarchy makes it possible to be helped by those above us and to help those who are coming along the path we have trodden. Master Moria talks about the armor of the warrior and how he may no longer need it, but hangs it up, waiting for one who comes along who may need it. We each stand at different points of vibration. Our point of tension is what it is and will increase. And eventually we will realize ourselves in greater and greater rings pass not, until the wholeness of things, the wholeness of the soul, of the universal soul, is realized. Meanwhile, we have to do all we can to live truly as souls, not just using the word. And if we succeed in doing that, we're going to help the emergence of the soul of our groups, of our communities, of our nations, and the soul of humanity as a whole. And the service activities offer us many opportunities to contribute our soul quality to the emerging soul of humanity, the great second-ray soul of love and wisdom. So we thank you, Tuya and I, and the members of the Moria Federation and University of Seven Rays in general, for attending this little meditation. We continue. Tomorrow morning will be, I had to change the schedule here slightly. This should be morning, but I couldn't, it couldn't be done because of other obligations. So tomorrow morning we resume that schedule with invoking, calling for the money, attracting the financial resources needed. Even the Christ needs those resources to help bring the plan on earth, to help the plan manifest on earth. Each one of us has a responsibility, however we can manage it, to live as a soul. You'll have to find your own way. Everybody does. Everybody builds their own antikarana, as it were, and everybody enters into the higher vibratory spaces based upon their own effort. And there, of course, meets with the group of people who have been doing likewise. So many blessings to all. This is a picture of the Maitreya Buddha, one of the earlier incarnations of the Christ, and a being expected to return just as we expect the Christ to return, always the same great identity. So I'll just close here by playing a little song that relates to Maitreya.
dream.